After overcoming complex regional pain syndrome through neuroplasticity techniques, I documented my journey in the book Unwinding Pain. Now I'm dedicated to helping fellow pain sufferers by sharing affordable and accessible pain management strategies on my YouTube show of the same name, Unwinding Pain. Greetings. Thank you for welcoming me back into your home today. For today's episode, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Right now, I'm speaking to you on September 29th, 2024. My book, Unwinding Pain, here you go, was released at the first week of this month, and I've been busy going out and meeting people and signing books and answering questions. And what I've been doing lately is I've been receiving a lot of questions, and I started putting together a list, common asked questions, and I want to take today's time to talk to you about the questions that I've been receiving, because I am a person with not only professional training in pain management, but I lived the experience of living with chronic pain for over 30 years. And through that time, I learned many different things along the way. It was not an easy journey. I'm happy to say that the world of pain management has changed since I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome in 1986. It was really difficult getting a diagnosis back in that day. And even today, for complex regional pain syndrome, there's no definitive test. And I'm not going to go into deep about how you assess complex regional pain syndrome, because as a person who works in pain management care, I see people with all sorts of issues of pain related to many different kinds of diseases and other kind of health conditions. So I'm going to talk on a broader sense today rather than talk specifically about complex regional pain syndrome. But you can be assured that everything I talk about is relevant if you do have complex regional pain syndrome. Now, I will say that my pain from my pain condition was burning, how it presented itself. It was burning all the way down the left side of my body, down into my feet, and then my right foot. So my mobility was very compromised. I wore a TENS unit every single day for hours, all the waking hours of the day, to zap down the pain. There was very little medication that made a difference in my pain levels. So I was very compromised. Now, when I developed complex regional pain syndrome, I was only 33 years old. I was a mother of a young boy who was 5 years old when I was diagnosed. I was 2 years into a new marriage. So I also, we were setting up a blended family where my son now had a stepdad. He did have a very active father. So we were a blended family, and my son would visit with his dad on the weekend, and then he'd visit with him during the summers when we moved away from the location where we were both residing in. So, I've been through where you need to be flexible because life changes. And against that backdrop, my body was killing me, and there was no answer. But I had to get on with being a new wife and being a parent to my son. And what I learned over time, I want to share with you. It was not easy. I had a very active 5-year-old who wanted to do all those fun things, and he was into Star Wars and all these other things that were brand new out in the world. And he got into something called Mario Brothers, Nintendo, I think it was called. And we set it up for him, and I really lost the use of my dominant hand. And I wanted to show him how to play the game, and I couldn't do it. And he became a real expert at the game, and every now and then he would want me to play with him, and it was very, very hard to play that game with him. So there I was, a very disabled mom, being a parent. And my son was very compassionate, though he was only 5 years old and soon to turn 6. He had to witness me not being able to do those normal things that he was used to seeing me do. And that ranged from going grocery shopping and carrying the groceries into the house. He soon became my little helper. And as soon as the groceries were put into the shopping cart at the grocery store, he would count how many bags there were. So when we went to the car, he would carefully count, and he would lift them out and put them into the car for me. And then when we got home, he would take him into the house. And oftentimes just reaching into the bags to put things on the shelf were too much for me. So he helped me in that way. And at the time, the husband I was with at the time, he was working full time. So he often didn't get home until about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So I would be home with my son all through that time, trying to approximate what a happy marriage was, getting food cooked and to set a table. And I'll tell you, it was a real hard reach to do that sometimes. I felt like I was always coming up short. And my husband would come in home after a long day and commuting from he had a difficult commute because I lived in the Bay Area and the traffic was horrendous. So there was no way I wanted to talk to him at the end of the day to say, "Oh, I had a miserable day. My pain was really horrible." I would want to keep it pleasant, and I would provide, interesting meals for him, but it came at a cost of my energy and my pain tolerance. So every night when I went to bed, I was coming up short. I made it through the day, and I'd have to face another morning. And then it would start over again. How do you parent when you're in terrible pain? And I'll say it's not easy, but you find ways to engage your children without having to put out more energy than necessary. And you start doing more passive kind of interactions where perhaps you're going to sit and read to them, and that's easy. Forget doing the bike rides or the long walks. But you try to find ways to engage with your children. And then you want to answer questions about, well, what's the matter with your mom? And depending on the age of the child, you could say, well, I have an owie that just is not healing. And then you have to answer the questions of why can't a doctor cure you? And then you have to explain, well, my doctor doesn't have a cure for it, but he can help me feel more comfortable. And then you can explain to your child, you don't have to worry. You're not going to catch this. This isn't like uh, a cold that you can catch or the flu that you can catch. This is just in mom's body right now. And hopefully I'm going to start feeling better. And then you can start giving your children ways to help you feel better by the actions they take. And I explained to my son, if you sit down and do your homework right away, when I still have energy at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, instead of asking me to finish up with you at 7:30, that's really helpful for me. So you have to give them suggestions of how they can help you. And as the kids are older, then you respond to them in a different way. And you can be more specific about, telling your son or daughters, well, I can't clear the table at night. I'm just exhausted. I stood in the kitchen and that took a toll on my body, but I stood there and chopped and diced and I prepared a home cooked meal for you. Can you please help me out? And by giving your children a way to help you, it makes it more comfortable for everybody and is teaching them compassion and empathy. So, that is a question I get a lot about parenting. Another question I get is, what do you say to people who look at you and say, how come you don't feel good? You look fine. How could you be in pain? And I had that experience in my life. When I was disabled from complex regional pain syndrome, I was eligible for a handicap plate because walking is really hard. My feet were on fire and I had spasms through my back. And again, I was wearing a TENS unit pulsating under my clothes to try to diminish some of the severe pain I was feeling. So from the outside, people couldn't see how debilitated I was. At most, they could see I have a droopy eye because I had surgery that was a failure to cure my condition, but left me with a permanent droopiness on the left side of my face. Or maybe if they had an astute eye and I had a skirt on, they could notice that one of my legs had less circumference than the one at the other leg. But very few people notice that. And instead they say, how come you're parking in a disability parking spot? And I'd point to my placard and I say, well, I'm eligible, I have that. And then most people would shake their head. And other times when I had the energy, I'd reach under my shirt and bring out my TENS unit. I said, I wear this thing to help me walk through the store. And then they would apologize and say, I'm sorry, you looked healthy. Well, you know what? There's a lot of disabilities that are not visible, cardiac disabilities, other kinds of mobility disabilities. There's many, many types of things. There's types of autoimmune diseases that drag you down so much just to walk through the front door of a store is an effort, let alone walking up and down the aisles. So, teaching the public not to judge by what they think healthy is is a step towards educating everybody about the invisibilities of disability. Okay, so that I lived through that experience. One very moving experience I had was in San Francisco. I was in line in the women's bathroom. You know how long the lines can be in women's bathroom, and I was using a cane at the time. And there was 10 women in front of me, and people were going in and out of the stalls, including the disabled stall, which of course has a higher toilet, which is much more comfortable to sit on if you have any kind of orthopedic issues with your back. And I did, and I do, or, sitting, it's difficult. So suddenly, a woman with a very heavy European accent saw me and said, "Oh, you should not be at the end of the line." And she took my hand because I was walking with a cane. She goes, "Come to the front because you're next for the disabled stall." And all the other women looked with their mouth open, and then they looked down because they were embarrassed, because they realized they hadn't been concerned about me. And at the time, I was not. I'm 72 now, but I think that was 20 years ago, so I was only 52, so I wasn't an elderly person then. But I think they all felt a little bit ashamed that they hadn't thought about being caring about other people who may have been, who were disabled. So that was the only time I ever had that kind of concession for myself. And sometimes it was in grocery stores, and once or twice I would drop my cane, and suddenly people would run over to help pick it up for me, and I really appreciated that. So it's not easy being a disabled person in our society, but we have to educate people around us about what we need and what is helpful for us. And that comes to talking about, how do you explain to your partner, your loved one, or your friends, how compromised you are and what they could do to help you. I mean, most times people will say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. What a tragedy. You're in pain." And then they don't want to engage because, what do you say to somebody who's in terrible pain? Every now and then someone would say to me, "How can I help you?" And that was very rare that someone would say, "How can I help you? How can I make a difference in how you feel right now?" So what I've learned through my lived experience of being in chronic pain is I have to explain to people what I need so I can participate or achieve something in whatever day. If somebody says, "Let's go for lunch," I have to talk about, when I was in terrible pain, well, how far is that going to be from where I park? What's the accommodations like? Now, with complex regional pain syndrome, I was very sensitive to a lot of noise. If we were going to go to a place that had booming music or a live band, that would not be relaxing for my nerve endings. And I'd have to say, "Well, why don't we do something a little bit more leisurely? Or maybe we could even go to a park and I can have a blanket and I could recline and enjoy a picnic with you." I mean, that would be really nice. So I started educating people in my life. And, I also, when we talk about relationships and chronic pain, I did live through a divorce with my chronic pain. I navigated through divorce, and I happily met my third husband. Yes, three times I've been married. I met my third husband, who I've been with for over 24 years now. When he met me, he knew I had pain, but he really didn't know it. If you talk to him today, he'd say, I knew she was in pain, but I really didn't know. And it was when I was on my journey of writing my book, Unwinding Pain, that he really started understanding of the severity of my pain. And he looked back with a little regret that he couldn't have helped me more. But he was a very good care companion. He was concerned whenever I said, the drafts were really bad on me. I could be sitting in a room and nobody else would feel the draft, but my hypersensitivity of my neurological condition was on high alert. And my husband would make sure to get me a blanket or to shut the door so that ever small draft that didn't make a difference to anybody else but was bombarding my body, he would make a difference for that. And also he learned that, I couldn't lift. He would find easier ways for me to get through my day. But he really didn't feel that he understood. And, we put a lot of pressure on our loved ones because we expect, why don't they do this for me? Why don't they do something in the kitchen? Why don't they do some more vacuuming? Because I can't bend down. I'd see something on the floors and I just couldn't bend down to pick it up. But yet, my husband would walk by it. And then my stepkids, who I love dearly, they came into my life when they were both adolescents. Two wonderful, compassionate people in their own right. And still, they didn't understand my pain. And pain, it's a very personal experience. And some people's pain is spasming. Mine was burning, so we all experience it in a different way. But there are very common things that we do experience about pain. It radically changes our life. We are no longer the person we were before it happened. And in my life, I lost a career. I lost the dignity of having a paycheck. I had to go through getting on disability. And then I had to go through legitimizing my pain every 6 months for the disability requirements. So I'd have to go see the doctor and they'd have to say, okay, yes, she's stationary. She's not getting better. And that always invades your life. You don't ever belong to yourself anymore. You're a public being where they can put judgment on you. So I understand the stress of that, just like I understand the stress of finally getting a diagnosis. And then the sadness sometimes you feel, or all the time you feel, if it's not immediately a cure. Like you can take antibiotic for a strep throat, or if you have surgery for an appendectomy, you can have an appendectomy because your appendix, has burst. Okay, that's a curative thing. Well, for many of our chronic pain conditions, there's no cure. There is an improvement that you could have through some medications and some behaviors. And that's what, this channel is all about. It's taking what you're doing through the involvement you have with your healthcare practitioner and adding your self-care. And part of self-care is learning how to navigate just getting through the day. And that's why I'm putting the effort in, and the discomfort of being with technology and learning how to be, videotaped, or whatever you call it nowadays. I guess it's not on video, but I'm going to call it videotaping. And I'm making this effort. And I hope that you understand I am not a professional performer. I'm doing the best I can with my limitations of knowledge and talent as far as public speaking, because I want to touch your heart from my heart. And so I hope I answered a few of the questions that have come my way. And I hope they answered the things that you've been wondering about. And please, anytime you want, you could go to bonnielester.com to write to me, or you can leave a public question at the bottom, for this film. Anyway, that's it for today. And I'll continue monitoring questions and answer the ones I think that most people are interested in. So take care and bye for now. I understand what it's like to live with chronic pain, as I shared in today's video. As a person certified in advanced pain rehabilitation, I'm well aware of the financial burden that treatment can impose. That's why I'm offering affordable, science-based strategies to help improve your comfort levels in my videos. Please hit the like button to help this show grow and leave a comment about topics you're interested in. Since you welcome me into your home, I'd like to extend an invitation for you to visit bonnielester.com and schedule a complimentary Zoom meeting with me. I'd love to learn more about your specific pain challenges. But remember, pain recovery isn't a destination, it's a journey. Keep unwinding that pain one step at a time.